The second Five Nights at Freddy's movie is less than a year away, and with filming taking place as I write the script, there's a lot to be excited for. I'm sure the big question on everybody's mind is, well, what exactly is going to happen in this movie? While I don't have the answer to that, I mean, none of us do, I do think I have a pretty good guess based on how the first movie went. Hey everyone, my name is Mikey, and welcome back to the channel. Before we start, if you're not subscribed, you should consider it, especially if you like Five Nights at Freddy's. Make sure to drop a like if you enjoy the video, and let's get into it. Oh, and also this video will contain spoilers for the first FNAF movie, so if for some reason you haven't seen it yet but still want to, don't watch this video.
Skibbity, my friend.
The FNAF 2 movie, FNAF movie 2, whatever we're calling it, could go so many different ways. Before we talk about what could happen though, a quick summary of the first movie, for those of you that haven't seen it in a while or who have never seen it but are still watching this video. The movie follows Michael Smith and his sister Abby during his first week as Freddy's newest security guard. On one of these nights, he learns that the animatronics are possessed and that they're appearing in his dreams somehow. He also meets a police officer named Vanessa, no relation to this Vanessa, who seems to know a lot more than she's letting on. A few nights go by, then Mike gets attacked and almost killed by Freddy's band before being saved by Vanessa. Big lore drops happen where she explains that she actually knows everything and is part of it. Oh yeah, Mike also has a missing little brother that Vanessa also knows about. I guess he's fairly important, especially for my theories. Anyways, Mike goes to confront his brother's killer, almost dying before Vanessa once again shows up to save him, getting stabbed in the process. Highly requested Springlock scene happens and Mike, Vanessa, and Abby escape. Vanessa goes to the hospital and is in a coma of sorts, while Mike and Abby live happily ever after. Some people also try to break in and end up getting stuffed, but that's a pretty normal day at Freddy's Pizza Place. That's a relatively simple summary, but the important bits for my theory are there.
Every way to Sunday, this game is a prequel.
Now that I've gone over all the important stuff, the first question for me, and I'm sure a lot of other people, was, is this going to be a sequel or a prequel, just like the game? I think this is an easy answer. The second movie will be a sequel, and I have a couple of reasons for this. First being, it's just less confusing. Remember that this movie isn't just being made for a small group of people. It's a film and it needs to make a lot of money. Basically, it's got to be simple enough for a lot of people to enjoy, and if it was a prequel, well, that's complicated. How do you explain the Wizards to someone who's not super into the deep lore stuff? It's hard to do. I do think we will see what happened before the first movie, but it will be presented in some kind of flashback scene like the dream sequences in the first film. Another reason that this film could be a prequel is just because the movie timeline is different from the games. They're not following the exact same order, and I don't think that the games can really be used to explain what's going to happen in the movies.
Vanessa, I got my fastball stuck.
One main point about the ending of the first movie is that Vanessa was in a coma at the end of it, and I think that they could go a few different ways with this. One of these is pretty simple, she just dies. I don't think that's happening though, because well, that wouldn't be very interesting now, would it? The real thing that I predict is this. Vanessa is going to wake up from her coma, but forget about how awful of a person her dad is. She'll probably forget about Freddy's and the yellow rabbit and most of what happened, but maybe not everything. I think she'll remember Garrett. Maybe seeing his toy plane or something like that will spark the memory. This will motivate her to tell Mike about the whereabouts of his brother, or at the very least what happened to him. I think that Garrett will come back as the puppet, which is what Vanessa might mention. Maybe even Vanessa finds Garrett in a dream of sorts while in her coma, and it wakes her from it, much like Mike found the dead kids in the first movie. I just know that in some shape or form, Vanessa will remember something about the location and circumstances of Garrett's disappearance. That brings me to the motives of the movie. Why in the world would Mike ever go back to any Freddy's location after almost dying multiple times and almost getting his sister stuffed into a suit too? To find his brother, of course. That's what he was trying to do in the first movie after he learned of the ghost children. Now you'd think he would learn after, what happened, but honestly I don't think he will. I think that he will learn of Garrett possibly possessing some kind of animatronic from Vanessa and will want to investigate it more. Garrett will, again, probably be the puppet, but I don't think that will be made clear until near the end of the movie.
Was that the bite of 87?
The location this movie takes place in could be one of a few. It all really depends on where the Five Nights at Freddy's 2 Freddy's location is. The most likely answer here is Nebraska. Perhaps we return to Mike's childhood town. There is a possibility that they were also just visiting Nebraska, and part of the movie will be finding the exact place that they were at when Garrett was kidnapped. Whatever the case, they find this other Freddy's location featuring the toy animatronics. How would we then explain the Wizards being at this new location? Well, that's simple actually. They're just different animatronics from the ones in the first film. After all, Afton is a pretty terrible guy, and I'm sure in the movie universe he's killed plenty more than just 6 kids. I also think that Garrett may be hostile at first, blaming Mike for what happened, much like Mike already does to himself. Another way that they could introduce the Wizards is by bringing us back to the Freddy's location that is in the first movie. However, I don't think they're going to do this simply because I think they're saving it for FNAF 3 with a big reveal of Springtrap and all that. Also, if they go back there, it would be hard to also have the toy animatronics in the same movie, considering that they would have to travel very far to another Freddy's location. So I really just don't think this is the answer here. Another interesting question about this movie is the time frame that it's taking place in. I think it'll take place like a year or so after the first movie, nothing too insane. The flashback scenes though will be far more interesting. Garrett died clearly while the Spring Bonnie suit was still being actively used, not just for luring kids but also performances. That would imply Fredbear's Family Diner would also still be around during these scenes, which means we may even get to see a glimpse of Fredbear himself. This movie will take place in the early 2000s, with the flashback scenes being in the late 70s or early 80s, perhaps 1983.
This is officially the end of Five Nights at Freddy's.
So with all my theories in place, how do I think the full movie will go? Vanessa awakens from her coma 1 year after the end of the first movie. Her memory is very faded, so Mike and Abby work with her to restore some of the moments she lost. One day, she finds that old red airplane toy and everything floods back to her. She brings us up to Mike, telling him the location of the FNAF 2 pizzeria. They travel there for 5 more nights to uncover the truth about Garrett. Over the runtime of the movie, there are hints at Garrett being the puppet. Night 5, they discover the truth. Something takes over the animatronics while Mike and Garrett are reuniting, causing them to become aggressive, despite Garrett not wanting them to. The movie ends with a cliffhanger, an unknown fate for Mike, Vanessa, and Abby. A post-credits scene shows the owner of Fazbear Frights uncovering the room that Afton was locked in after the first film, setting up the third one. Another kind of crazy way that the end of this movie could go is that they end up discovering Vanessa isn't actually Afton's kid, and it was just another one of his victims that he kidnapped and raised as his kid. And then FNAF 3 could lead into both of them going to Afton and trying to end it all for good. That would be a crazy one, but I'm kind of here for it, but I still think my first theory is more likely. Before we go, I want to talk about a couple of things I would like to see in the movie. The bite of 87 would be perfect to see, obviously, and while my current predictions don't see it happening, I still hope they find a way to incorporate it into the film. It's literally the most iconic event in Five Nights at Freddy's, and it needs some representation. One more thing I'd like to see is the use of a Freddy mask. I don't know how they do this, but it feels like an important thing to include for the FNAF 2 movie. Maybe they could have a scene where an animatronic is face to face with Mike and he uses a mask to trick it and get away. I think that would be pretty cool to see. At the very tail end of this video, I just want to say that obviously none of what I said today is confirmed. This video was just for fun and all that stuff. I'd like to know what you think will happen in the second movie, so leave a comment down below with all your theories. Thank you for all the recent support I've been getting. I appreciate it a bunch. I hope you enjoyed. Have a safe and happy new year, and I'll see you all next time. Okay, I don't know where this is going to be included in the video since this is recorded after I recorded the initial audio for this video. But anyways, what if Vanessa had an I will put you back together moment in her coma, like the crying child did in FNAF 4? I don't know who would be saying it, and I don't know if that's even like a possible thing, but it was just a thought that popped into my head and I thought I would include it in this video.